The following is produced by 5 Star Productions USA, which is solely responsible for its editorial content and is sponsored in part by a grant from Paul Mitchell Salon Hair Care.
Did you know that home insulation is being made from recycled bottles? We also found a utility company that's actually helping its customers save money. I'm Ed Begley, Jr. Join me as we answer these questions and more on Today's Environment.
Today, City
Saving
Council
gas,
in effect
reducing
with
carbon,
9,000
reducing
supermarkets
air
likely
pollutants by
lasting a
30%.
milestone in
Educational programs.
There are basically 3 things we can do with solid waste: put it in a landfill, burn it, or recycle it. Given the inherent problems associated with landfills and incineration, recycling makes a lot of sense. Now let's look at how another environmental problem is being addressed.
Collecting and processing materials are 2 parts of the recycling system that deal with one of the world's major environmental concerns: solid waste. This problem has reached the crisis stage due in part to the void created in the process for the purchase of recycled products. Companies and manufacturers have begun joining forces to establish comprehensive reduction programs. However, despite curbside collection bins and public awareness campaigns, recycling programs around the United States aren't working. Why? Largely due to the tremendous supply of recycled newspapers, glass bottles, office paper, and other materials that have been collected. When it comes to consumer and business demand for the products made from these materials, the economics of recycling falls apart. Few people realize that their local collection programs are only the beginning of the loop. At present, the cost of acquiring and processing recyclable materials far outweighs their value as a commodity that can be sold back to industry. The success of recycling in the long term won't depend on how much landfill space is saved, but on whether or not it makes economic sense. Top managers of companies like Bell Atlantic have made buying recycled products and investing in green research and development part of their overall business strategies. They've cut down on waste, increased profit margins, and have taken a leadership role as charter members of the National Recycling Coalition's Buy Recycled Business Alliance. These leaders are committed to increasing their purchases of recycled products, which will provide the missing link, the demand for recycled goods. Working as a concerned corporate citizen, Bell Atlantic updated its existing recycling program by forming partnerships in Virginia with the Hanover Association of Retarded Citizens and in New Jersey with the Camden County Association of Retarded Citizens. The organization's members work 6 hours each day sorting various grades of the discarded paper, which will then be picked up by a recycler. Not only are telecommunications companies using recycled paper for new telephone directories, they're also recycling the used phone books. In addition, hot melt glues have been eliminated to prevent the gum-up of paper mill operations. This industry generates excess, damaged, and outdated equipment and materials during the normal course of business. Telephone sets, cable reels, and switching gear would be everywhere if companies like Bell Atlantic didn't find ways to reprocess their own goods. Having equipment repaired, returning unused materials to distribution centers, and selling reusable parts to outside companies are options. Only after these are exhausted do they process the remaining items for sale as scrap. All solutions lend to keeping our landfills clear of telecommunication waste. The Environmental Protection Agency's goal is to divert 40% of waste by the year 2000. This means individual consumers and companies would need to buy back approximately 80 million tons of recycled products per year. At present, 20 million tons of post-consumer materials are purchased in this country, with 50% of that by businesses that are placing emphasis on closing the loop through buying recycled.
Most of us would never think that this bottle could be recycled into insulation to save energy in our homes. Let's see how this is accomplished.
Have you ever wondered what happens to all of the glass bottles we recycle? Each day, 30,000 tons of glass containers are used, and about 1/3 of these find their way to collection centers. Unfortunately, the rest usually end up in our nation's already congested landfills. That's over 7 million tons of non-biodegradable material a year. These figures are inspiring Americans to take further actions to preserve our environment. And the reuse of daily products such as glass, paper, plastic, and aluminum is becoming so popular that many cities are upgrading their existing collection efforts. Post-consumer glass, unlike some other materials, can be made into useful products that will last for years. At this recycling plant in Bakersfield, California, up to 400 tons of glass that would otherwise be discarded is processed each day. Here it is cleaned, crushed, and delivered to Schuler International, which uses a minimum of 20% recycled glass in its commercial and residential building insulation. If this sounds like a new concept, that's because it is. In the past, only sorted glass was sent back to the manufacturer, and the broken or miscellaneous bottles were generally landfilled. Schuler's fiberglass process can use any type of mixed bottle glass. That means it doesn't have to be sorted by color, resulting in a very efficient and cost-effective manufacturing operation. The crushed glass, or cullet, is mixed with other materials, melted, fiberized, and formed into a variety of fiberglass insulation products. Pre-cut standard length bats are the choice of professional contractors, remodelers, and builders. Do-it-yourselfers may use either the bats or rolls that can be installed in attics, walls, and crawl spaces. And for those hard-to-reach areas, loose-fill fiber nodules can be blown into place by a professional contractor. When you consider that 1/5 of all energy consumed in the United States is used in the home, and 50 to 70% of that is either for heating or cooling, you may understand why some experts have determined that if every newly built or existing home in the United States was properly insulated, we could save more than 300 million barrels of oil a year. Abstract numbers like this can be hard to relate to, but on an individual basis, it's possible to see immediate energy savings by simply upgrading your insulation. And savings of up to 30% on your heating and cooling bills are possible after installing fiberglass insulation into a building that is inadequately insulated. In most cases, the cost of these improvements will be recovered within a few years. And as impressive as these economic benefits are, there are some very important environmental ones too. The most obvious is reducing energy use by building better homes. The more efficient they are, the less energy there is to be generated, and ultimately the less pollution produced. Another less apparent benefit to the environment is the valuable space in landfills that can be saved, simply by recycling. Isn't it nice to know that the bottle you use today can be reused tomorrow as a beneficial product?
There was a time when the words worthless and garbage were synonymous, but that's all changed now because waste is being used as a fuel to generate electric power.
For over a century now, the iron, steel, chemical, and petroleum industries have been in existence, manufacturing a variety of products such as fuels, lubricants, and gases. And through all the years, little was known of the chemical byproducts produced from the operations, which were discarded along with the residual waste materials. The country was growing, and so was the need to industrialize. The thought that processed wastes could be harmful never entered people's minds. Discharging into the waters and dumping on adjacent land or remote sites was normal practice, never realizing that many years later, environmentalists would discover that industry was destroying the land and water worldwide. As businesses compete in today's global market, they're called upon to effectively use the limited resources within our increasingly fragile environment. This dilemma poses a challenge to companies to find both safe and economically practical solutions to these mounting problems. One alternative approach to waste management was developed by Kippen Industries, a Pennsylvania-based company. Through waste to fuel conversion and recycling, they're finding new uses for what others have deemed worthless. Each year, more tons of refuse are produced than available landfills or conventional incineration can effectively handle. This issue becomes even more critical with the EPA and state agencies' regulation and banning of certain disposal practices. Recycling is the most feasible and cost-effective method to eliminate waste and preserve industrial resources. Through this advanced technology, paper, styrofoam, plastics, railroad ties, and utility poles become a low-sulfur, low-ash, non-polluting fuel. Other types of plastics are used to make a variety of new products. Trash piles and even entire landfills can be segregated for recycling and reuse. Abandoned coal refuse can be reclaimed instead of producing acid drainage, which kills streams and lakes. And items such as concrete, asphalt, and glass, which can be utilized as a substitute for sand, are all being reused as valuable construction materials. Each year, over 250 million tires are discarded in the U.S., and that number is growing at an alarming rate. However, processing and recycling systems can utilize boilers modified to burn whole or shredded tires, which produce higher BTUs than coal, with lower sulfur emissions. The environmental liabilities of industrial sites can be controlled through mobile recycling and remediation technologies, also developed by Kippen. Independent laboratories analyze soil and water samples to determine specific contaminants. The engineers and technicians then recommend the most effective and efficient remediation methods. The mobile fleet offers a full spectrum of on-site waste services. Plant demolition with site cleanup has also become cost-effective by taking advantage of the scrap value of the steel as a recyclable material, as well as that of salvageable equipment. Industry is now realizing the important benefits of cleaning up and beautifying their sites. Not only can it reduce liability, improve corporate image, and attract new customers, but it makes for happier employees, neighbors, and a better environment for all.
Contrary to what many people think, electric utility companies have a vested interest in helping people to save energy and money. We're going to visit with one to find out how and why.
How many times have you spoken or heard these words? Turn off the lights when you leave the room, you're wasting electricity. Shut the door, you're letting in a lot of cold air. During the summer, this might be turned around to say, shut the door, the air conditioner is on. When a parent says something like this to a child, it's understandable. But why would an electric utility company tell its customers to conserve energy? For some people, this just doesn't make sense. After all, utility companies want us to use the power, right? Well, the truth is that energy conservation measures not only help the environment, but they're good for business too. Strengthening and encouraging long-term customer relations through increased savings and competitiveness. There's an additional benefit as well. By reducing the demand for energy, utilities can also postpone or delay the expense of constructing larger power plants, which in turn allows them to remain competitive. Companies like Dayton Power and Light have found that by helping customers use energy more efficiently, they better utilize their existing facilities, and it becomes a win-win situation for everyone. Customers save money, the company lowers its operating costs, and the environment reaps the benefits. Here in Dayton, Ohio, both residential and commercial customers are taking part in a number of programs which include workshops, audits, and rebates, all targeted at energy conservation. For example, at the new DP&L Energy Resource Center, architects, builders, plant managers, and industry professionals are getting up-to-date, reliable information on the newest technologies to save energy. Here in the Lighting Technology Center, visitors can apply what they have learned in the classroom to a variety of practical applications. In the Residential Technology Center, there's a full-scale home with everything from the newest construction materials to the most efficient heating and air conditioning systems and appliances. The company has also published a book containing hundreds of money-saving tips and offers an 800 number for customers looking for information on such topics as insulation, rebate programs, or home energy audits. Home and business audits conducted by trained professionals are designed to find problems like poor insulation and inefficient heating systems. Among the rebate programs, homeowners can receive from $150 to $850 cash back when they purchase a new energy-efficient heat pump or central air conditioning. Industrial customers can also qualify for savings of up to $1,920 for each electric motor which is replaced with a more efficient one, resulting in an additional savings of up to $2,000 per year. Rebates of up to half the purchase price on new efficient compact fluorescent bulbs are also being offered to commercial customers. Not only do these new bulbs draw less power for the same amount of light, but they last longer. With human nature being as it is, sometimes people need information and incentives for changing their habits. In this case, the incentives for conserving our precious natural resources may be financial, but isn't it nice to know that the fringe benefits are also helping the environment?
Chlorofluorocarbons, or CFCs as they're known, have been used in a wide variety of products and are being blamed for the depletion of the ozone layer. Through an international agreement, they are to be completely phased out by the year 2000. But as we'll see, some industries are way ahead of schedule.
Two of the biggest environmental problems that we face today are related to energy and the depletion of the ozone layer. As we all know, our modern world is dependent on energy to light, heat, and cool our homes and offices, and to keep the wheels of industry turning. We have also come to recognize that we must conserve our limited supply of precious fossil fuels. One important way to do this is to construct buildings with adequate thermal insulation to reduce energy consumption. Since the days of the oil crisis in the early 70s, the use of polyiso insulation has been on the rise. Today, it's used in approximately half of all new commercial roofing insulation applications and 40% of all residential sheathing jobs. And, according to the U.S. Department of Energy, we can save a lot of fuel. For example, they estimate that if all of the buildings constructed in one given year used polyiso insulation instead of other materials, we could save 58.6 million barrels of oil over the course of the building's useful life. From an energy conservation point of view, this is indeed good news, but there was a problem. Up until recently, polyiso products were manufactured using chlorofluorocarbons as a blowing agent, specifically CFC-11. Since these chemicals are believed to be depleting the ozone layer, thereby exposing us to the hazards of ultraviolet radiation from the sun, an international pact known as the Montreal Protocol was signed to eliminate all CFCs by the year 2000. In response to this, the Polyiso Cyanurate Manufacturers Association, known as PEMA, made a commitment to beat the federal and international deadline. In partnership with the Environmental Protection Agency and Oak Ridge National Laboratory in Tennessee, they set out to identify CFC substitutes that are 85 to 90% ozone depleting free, and to evaluate them in terms of their thermal and mechanical properties. After a series of field and laboratory tests over a 3-year period, the Oak Ridge findings showed that another chemical, HCFC 141B, was a viable substitute for CFC-11. In addition, the new products look and perform exactly like the original ones. With the help of organizations like PEMA, who received the 1993 EPA's Stratospheric Ozone Protection Award, we're seeing dramatic progress. and the reduction of other forms of air pollution as well. Since less fossil fuel is being burned by electric utilities to meet our heating and cooling needs, less carbon dioxide, a major contributor to the greenhouse effect, is released into the atmosphere. However, the battle to preserve our planet continues. Industry and government must form a partnership to forge new paths for environmental progress. Organizations like PEMA remain committed to the development of cost-effective products to meet energy conservation and environmental standards.
Water is a solvent we use to clean things. In time, it will dissolve just about anything. However, there are a lot of other solvents being used in industry that raise some big challenges to the people who must dispose of them.
Hazardous materials, as defined by the Environmental Protection Agency, include a wide variety of substances. Some are highly explosive or flammable. Some are radioactive, and others present a biological threat. However, most materials receive this classification because they're toxic to people, plants, and/or animals. That is, they're poisonous. Among the most common are the chemical solvents that are used in many industrial and medical laboratory applications. Until recently, spent solvents were simply disposed of with little or no government regulations. But in 1986, things changed. Now, every company that generates more than 200 pounds of hazardous waste per month must comply with strict EPA reporting guidelines and procedures. This has led to the creation of a whole new industry, hazardous waste disposal. For a fee, companies will pick up and dispose of your waste safely. Usually, this means incineration. Not coincidentally, many operations are owned by the same chemical companies that produced the solvents in the first place. As a result, there is no incentive to find a better alternative. However, Chemical Management Technology Incorporated, an Orange Park, Florida-based company, has come up with a way to minimize hazardous materials. And their LabMaster and ChemMaster solvent recovery systems are reclaiming profits from it. Rather than burn the used solvents to get rid of them, these systems distill the waste and recycle it. In addition to the environmental benefits, this results in cost reductions on two fronts. First, there is a significant savings in new chemicals purchased. And second, the amount of toxic material is reduced, resulting in lower waste disposal costs. For example, in a typical industrial application that might generate 10 55-gallon drums of hazardous waste a month, the amount to be disposed of can be reduced to 1 or 2 drums, which consists of the contaminants that were removed during distillation. The 8 or 9 drums of recovered solvents can be used over and over again in the manufacturing process. The ChemMaster, which is designed for industrial use, produces 99% pure solvent from the waste. Similarly, the LabMaster, which was designed for use in medical facilities like hospitals and clinics, produces alcohol and xylene, which is equal to or better than the original products. In fact, the purity of these solvents has been verified with gas chromatographs and other scientific test equipment. Most companies that handle large amounts of hazardous materials do so in a responsible manner, but there are still thousands of unregulated generators of toxic waste. As long as they stay below the EPA minimums, the individual companies are still legal. But that's not helping the environment because as a group, they make a large contribution to the waste problem. The significance of those new solvent recovery systems is that they now offer small companies a profit motive. They don't have to wait for government regulations to force them to act.
Given a choice between helping the environment or improving the economy, which would you pick? As we've just seen, environmental responsibility is good business. I'm Ed Begley, Jr. Join me again next week on Today's Environment for more creative solutions to some tough problems.
you know of any interesting environmental success stories, call us at 407-997-9800. This has been a presentation of 5 Star Productions USA. The preceding program was sponsored in part by a grant from Paul Mitchell Salon Hair Care.